three different places, three different types of wines. The next wine is a Dolcetto, 2009 Dolcetto from Cascina Roccalini, which is in Piemonte, close to Barbaresco. That's their specialty. They make a very small amount of this, 25 cases a year for the U.S. market. We are their sole importer, so we see it all. It's generally a jump ball when it comes in. People taste it, and you know, whoever gets first dibs on it takes it all. And that's how it works with the Dolcetto. He's really, his main focus is his Barbaresco. And there's an interesting story with this guy. He was selling his fruit to Bruno Giacosa for a number of years. In 2004, Giacosa approached him about making his Barbaresco into a cru, so it would be Giacosa Roccalini, and he balked only because he didn't want to give up the rights to his name. So he decided to make the wine on his own, but he did it with the help of a friend who happened to be Dante Scaglione, who is Bruno Giacosa's winemaker, or was. Scaglione left Giacosa in 2008 to go out and start some projects on his own. This was the first place that he went. He is now Cascina Roccalini's full-time enologist. He does some other projects. He's back consulting at Giacosa, but this is one of his pet projects. The wines reflect his hand, and the quality of the fruit is incredible.
So from this guy, you're bringing in
Dolcetto,
Barbera, and Barbaresco.
Barbaresco.
It's got a nice dark color. Now, traditionally in that region, Dolcetto had always been like almost like a nouveau. It was like the first wine of the harvest, you know, that traditionally ready early. That's what people drank. And then Barbera was the food wine. It was like the everyday wine, because Barbera is generally a highly acidic grape. So I mean, now with modern winemaking technologies, a lot of the people who are into Barbera have sort of tamed that acidity down a little bit. And then Barbaresco and Barolos were the special occasion wines.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a pretty dark color, you know. Sometimes Dolcettos can be sort of a little lighter, brighter. Is there anything that he does, like cold soaking or anything to darken the color? He
does some batonnage to try to extract some color out of the skins. You're right, Dolcetto for the most part is a very, very fair, light wine, very simple, made for very simple dishes. The way Paolo, who runs the property, feels is that if he's going to put his name on it, he wants it to be spectacular. And anything short of that, he won't release. It's a very small family property. They run 4 hectares, which is around 10 acres. And if he doesn't feel it's up to his standards, he just won't sell it. And this is not a family that can afford to skip vintages. But in 2006, he felt his Barbaresco was not up to his standards, and he skipped it. Sold off the juice and moved on to 2007. We sold the 2005. It sold out immediately. We ran out of wine very quickly. The 2007 is just starting to catch on. We took the order, we took the delivery over the summer, and it's not really a summer wine. So the Barbaresco is starting to sell now. The Dolcetto is already all gone. 2009 vintage was a relatively warm vintage, but a good vintage. It wasn't like 2003, and it was an exceptional Dolcetto vintage. So the wine sold, especially in the summertime. These are slightly lighter wines. The color is great.
Well, you got. I mean, there's a lot of fruit in there, and it's almost like a cranberry-ish type fruit, and then the finish has got like this nice sort of combination of acid and tannin wash. So I mean, this is definitely a food wine. This is definitely something that you could, you know, do with a pizza or like a nice, you know, spaghetti and meatballs or something like that. That's what this is in there for. And so this sells for. You know,
this sells for about $18.99. The wines are not inexpensive, but for the quality, I think they represent a phenomenal value.
All right, so let's move on.
Okay, the next producer, we have beaten the bushes in Tuscany, which is fairly well picked over. This was an interesting property. This is Casale Pozzuolo's Base Rosso. It's 100% I missed the bucket. It's 100% organic Sangiovese. His cousin is the winemaker. His cousin worked for Col d'Orscia for 15 years, so there is a bit of a pedigree there. Again, he runs about 4 hectares. The vines average about 30 years.
So now, is this in the Brunello region? Or?
It's from Montecucco, which is, if I was going to compare Montecucco with any other part of Tuscany, I would say that it's closer to the weather in Montalcino than it is in anything else. So it's a little more fruit forward. It's definitely a very American-friendly type wine. It's very pleasing. It's got a nice round mouthfeel to it.
So this is 100% Sangiovese?
100%, all organic, and they only use native yeast. You know, Ed, one of the other things that we do, we really put our producers through their paces. I should say we put the wines through their paces. When we begin our tasting day, and we have samples shipped over from all over Italy, we open them up early in the morning, sometimes around 8 o'clock in the morning. We do our normal morning meetings, go through our administrative stuff, and we come back and taste the wine every hour for about 5 or 6 hours. We want to assure ourselves that the wines will be better at the end of the day than they were in the beginning of the day. It's important to us that if we're seeing a number of clients throughout the day, normal work day is, 9 o'clock, a lot of retailers open up. We want to make sure that the first guy that tastes the wine has the same experience as the last guy that tastes the wine. Obviously, there's some evolution throughout the day because of air and everything else, but we want to make sure that these wines hold up and develop over that time period. Same with the whites. Doesn't change at all. And all these wines will be much more interesting at the end of the day than they are right now.
Now with this wine, being 100% Sangiovese, it seems like it's almost like there's a real ripeness in this wine, which is almost bordering on over ripeness. I mean, is there like longer hang time for this wine? Or?
There isn't. It's part and parcel with where they grow. That's just Montecucco in general. He's not at a particularly high elevation.
So it's a warmer microclimate.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it does have a nice, like you said, it has a nice soft finish, but it's got some of those, a little bit of pruny, a little bit of raisiny things going on with the red cherry,
I do get that. We tasted, and the thing about his wines, this is his base wine. It spends about 6 months in large oak. He's not a huge fan of oak, but he knows it's necessary to make the wines rounder. We tasted these back to 2003, and there is a vintage profile on every single one of these things. What you're tasting is not a house style, it's just representative of the vintage and the microclimate with the vintage.
So this is his base wine. The other wines that he makes are proprietary wines?
He does this and a Reserva, which is also 100% Sangiovese. It's slightly older vines, it's the better grapes. The Reserva is slightly different. I think it's not as fruit forward as this. It spends 18 months in oak, and it's got a little bit more of a longer term outlook as far as aging goes. Maybe a little bit better balanced according to what you and I might look for from European wine. But this is a crowd pleaser, and
and this retails for?
This retails for about $22.
All right. And next on the list here?
And the last wine I brought out is from a new producer for us. This is, the producer's name is Larco. Winemaker is Luca Federigo. And he was the cellar master for Quintarelli for 11 years. So he makes wines in that vein. Everything he does has a small amount of passito, which is the dried grapes from the Amarone. So there'll be a slight raisiny quality to that just from the shrinkage of the grapes as they dry. This is the Valpolicella Classico Superiore. In the U.S. we call it Ripasso. So we had them put Ripasso on the label. It's a running joke because they don't know what Ripasso means in Italy. It's made for the American market. According to him, Ripasso is something that was made up for the American market. It has nothing to do with Valpolicella and he put it on there. And
well, Ripasso has always been marketed as sort of like a baby Brunello.
Baby Amarone.
Baby Amarone,
yes. And traditionally there is some passito where they pass the wine through some of the leaves from the Amarone. In his case, he actually adds some of the Amarone back into the wine, and it gives you a more velvety, little more developed style. This is, you know, the typical local breakdown. It's
It
mostly.
does have like an Amarone nose, you know?
It does. It's but if you notice, the thing about the wine is the color is on the lighter side.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to brick around the edges a little bit.
Yeah.
He holds these back until he feels like they're ready to be drunk. And the Ripasso sold out. We brought it in a month and a half ago. It's gone already. And it's not like we didn't bring in a good quantity of it. It sold immediately. It's pretty freaking tasty, isn't it? You know what?
That's delicious.
What blew me away about his wines is the way this huge palate expansion
Yeah.
on these things.
And then you get that nice finish, which is like makes it perfect for the table. I mean, this is really good.
This sold to Bob Hopewell, most of this.
Yeah.
And this is going on his tasting menu. And this will retail for about $50. So.
Which is not cheap for a Ripasso. I mean, you can buy an Amarone for $50, but
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can buy a Yugo or you can buy a Rolls Royce. You know, there's always an analogy you can use. You know.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time and you know, letting us taste through the wines, and we'll link you up on the website. And
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
all right.